Okay, here are your crayons. Perfect. See, I knew I just needed you to help me. Do that. All of this is ready, and you have clean sheets on your bed. I washed your sheets and changed your bed. You could say, thank you, Nana. Thank you, Nana. Okay, so this is all ready for you to tuck it in. And I gave you some stuff. So you're set. Okay, Sarah. Can we put those back and go watch the movie? Come on. Hey, here is Nana and Poppy's bed stuff. Right there. Did you open their? No. Abby, do you have the controls? Hey, why are you having those controls? Well, not really. In there. Okay, do you want to see how it is? Because I have to go to my meeting. Where is it going to go? Hey, you need to know how to start to play it. Well, you start it. Okay. This is stop and start. Fast forward and move. Don't care about it. There's a. On the other controller. This is the controls for the volume. Can you come here and look at it? That's louder, that's soft. Okay, I look at loud.
Hello, Mr. Parker.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
I can, but I only see the top of your head.
Okay, well, I'm looking, I was bending down to see my computer. Hey, I'm not sure I'm getting your emails, Kelly. I went back through my emails trying to find the email you sent about this meeting, and maybe it's not cutting over to my own email anymore. That happened once before. Where
Do you want me to send it as a backup to your other email?
yeah, can you do that?
If I remember.
Okay. Because I just didn't. I went into the our website to get the address to get the Zoom link,
Okay, well, that works too.
but I hadn't. I just don't remember getting it, and it seemed like there was something else I don't remember getting, and I'm wondering if the when you send it to the over the server, it's supposed to automatically go into my own email, and maybe it's not doing that anymore. That happened once when Ed was around, and Ed fixed it.
Well, Richard might be able to help you out if you reach out to him.
Okay. It's going to be dark because it's getting dark earlier, and I'm in my car and I have the lights on, but the overhead light on, but it doesn't seem to. It's not enough to really show it, and the other little flashlight I have is just about dead. I'm in the parking lot of the Midland Library.
Okay. Hi, Maren. Welcome.
Hey, good evening.
And the lights aren't going to stay on. Oh no, I'd clicked them off.
So we can't see your pretty face then.
Who'd want to? I need a shave, or I need to trim my beard. Let's put it that way. There must be something going on at the library tonight because the parking lot's pretty full. So I'm not parked where the light from the overhead lights can penetrate into the car. It's just, I'm gonna have to get new batteries for that. I do it on the other one. That's not any better. I literally forgot there was a meeting tonight, to be honest with you. Sharon called me and reminded
Parker,
me.
come on.
Huh?
This is the highlight of your week.
No, it's not. I've been just really busy. I've had a show every other week. Every other weekend. I'm going to an antique show tomorrow. I'm not going as a vendor, just as a customer. I'd like to get back to live meetings, to be honest with you.
Well, I think Sharon might be okay with that. So maybe the next meeting we can do that.
And I'm hoping we can have a fairly short meeting tonight.
I don't know. We like to talk, Terry.
I know.
if you put everyone in their cars, especially as it gets colder and colder and darker, that'll just keep your meetings naturally short.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Of course,
Like anything else.
if I have the motor running or the ignition turned on, I got heated seats in my new vehicle, so it's one of the best
Aren't you
parts.
fancy?
Yeah.
Hi, Sharon.
Greetings. Hi. Hi. Oh,
Yes, it's dark, Sharon.
you are definitely in the
And
dark.
the flashlight is too dim to make any difference.
Terry, someday you gotta spring for home internet.
Well, I may do it. I may do it in a month or so because the Midway Library is closing for renovation.
Oh, well, I would encourage you to do that. I think your life would be a lot easier.
I don't know what I want to get a portable hotspot, but I don't know what those cost.
I don't know what that means.
It
I
means that there's no wiring. It's sort of like just a cell phone, I guess, that does the internet.
I know, but you're tapping off of someone else's internet then?
No, I'd be tapping off the cell tower.
Yeah,
No.
it depends on what provider you go with, and it depends on how much data usage you use.
I don't want a limit on it because I'm on the internet almost every day.
Well,
Going to the library.
I can tell you, we have Cricket and it is Consumer Cellular, and it is very reasonable for 2 lines. It's really reasonable. For the savings on fuel alone, Terry, it would pay for your internet per month. Honestly, it really
probably would. You're probably right.
No, it definitely would. At $6 a gallon for gas, it would
No, I
definitely.
paid $5. I paid $5 a gallon 2 days ago.
Harry, it doesn't matter. 6 or 5, you know what I mean. It would pay for itself in fuel savings alone.
Welcome, Nick and Renee.
Hello.
Zach is getting one of his kiddos down, so he might be a couple of minutes late. I am in beautiful downtown North Powder, Oregon, outside of beautiful LeGrand, and we have been babysitting the kids all week. Sharon, you can relate.
I can relate. Wave to
While
my dad.
my daughter is in Mexico celebrating her birthday and anniversary.
Oh, you lucky dog.
It's been fabulous, except we have to drive her to school at like 7 in the morning.
That's all right. You can stop
the
at
only
the coffee
time I was,
shop.
I think the only time I was in LeGrand, myself and a friend went back to photograph the trains in the Blue Mountains during the snow.
Oh,
We
nice.
stayed at some little motel in LeGrand.
Nice. Well, you can wave to my dad. He's up there in the Elkhorns, not far from you.
So Nick, thank you for the notes. I appreciate those.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anyone would be willing to do hour 2. I kind of run out of juice.
That what I was gonna say. I forgot who took those notes. I have never seen notes like that.
Or maybe I need to figure out how to summarize.
Or I don't know. I have never
now,
seen
Nick,
notes like that. That was yeoman's work.
Now, Nick, part of your job, you do meeting notes, right?
Yeah, but I'm not really taking part, and yeah, I mean, really only for pre-qual, pre-RFP proposal meetings. I do, but it's much less, seems simpler. There's a lot less dialogue going on.
Oh, okay. Well, Terry wants a shorter meeting today, so we're all going to talk less.
Well, to that, Nick, that was an incredible job on those notes. I've never seen that kind of note taking, and that must have been exhausting to do. And Kelly has taken notes meticulously. Maybe he has some hints on how to maybe not have to go back and forth with each person who speaks. But I will say, and then we can get on with the meeting, is that I do attend quite a few meetings at the that are state boards or state associations, and some boards have foregone meeting minutes because there are now recordings, and they
Right.
let recordings stand as minutes. And so if these are being recorded and kept, it's something to consider for the future.
Well, CNN requires us to submit our meeting notes. So until they change their,
Oh, written?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because for a video reference, you'd have to go and listen. It seems like a quicker scan through for something written. I wonder if there's any way to sort of export any auto feature to export dialogue from a video.
Well,
Zoom has auto transcriptions. I'm a project manager, so I do know those all the times. So it depends on how you set up your Zoom, but a lot of times if you record the meeting, you can actually turn on transcriptions. I still take notes, but that's a good way if you guys want to also have notes taken, or as a way to capture notes and then redo them after fact.
And they have tags on the audio. So for subject A, go to click on this. For subject B, click on that, and it takes you in the audio right to where it's discussed. So you don't have to listen to a 3-hour meeting to get to the subject you want.
Yeah.
Yep, you can also search for words, and then you can then click on the spot you want to listen to too.
Oh, interesting.
So somebody has joined us by iPhone. Could you identify yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Steve Schmidt.
Hi, Steve, welcome. So we're going to get started on the meeting. Zachary's going to join a little late. And then he has to leave around 8 to go to another neighborhood meeting for a half an hour. So we're going to get started with the meeting. Let's go around the room. I'm Kelly Davis. I'm now chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. I'm still looking for a co-chair. Sharon?
I'm Sharon Fuchs. I am a member of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. I live on Northeast Sacramento Street and 61st.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, Terry Parker, I'm a board member, and I'm a Land Use and Transportation Committee member, rep to the CNN for the land use. I apologize tonight. I'm in my car. The lighting isn't very good here. And Nick, I need to apologize to you because I forgot there was a meeting tonight and I haven't read the notes.
Well, you're fired, except you're not.
Firing.
Nick, you're next.
My name is Nick. I'm a member of this Land Use and Transportation Committee and member of the board at large.
Okay, Maren.
Hey everyone, Maren Viken. This is my first time joining as one of your guys' this meeting. So excited to listen and learn more about you guys. And I live on 53rd.
Renee, your turn.
Hi, it's Reen. My name is Reen Kerwald.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm a neighbor of Marin's, actually, across the street on 53rd and Wasco. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've been to a meeting.
Jenny? She's in the bathroom. Sanji?
Cooking dinner.
Hey, are we just giving introductions?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm Sanjeev. I'm a board member of RCPNA. This is actually my first year doing it, so still pretty brand new.
Good for you. This is Land Use and Transportation, and we're happy you're joining us.
Yep.
Okay, and I've immediately forgot the iPhone user's name. I apologize.
That's all right. I'm Steve Schmidt. I live on 53rd in Multnomah. My first time on a RCPNA.
Welcome. Okay, we're back to you, Jenny.
Is she muted?
Hello, I swear I'm Jenny Lyman. I'm a Land Use and Transportation Committee board member, and I live at 63rd.
Okay, Zachary, your turn. We're doing intros.
I
You're
thought Zach
muted.
was gonna be late. Oh, he's here? Okay.
He was.
Oh, he's not on audio. He's muted. Okay, we're gonna get started. Welcome, everyone. We are the Land Use and Transportation Committee, and we're hoping to get this meeting over early, but we'll see how things go. Welcome. And we are going to forego the land acknowledgement and the neighborhood agreement statements unless someone has a concern about that. Hearing none, I issued the agenda, and I have a couple of additions to the agenda that I'd like to talk about. One is the speed bumps at 62nd, Halsey and Broadway that Terry brought up at the last meeting. So we'd add that under new business. And then I'd also like to talk about the land use list and who gets the land use distribution of emails. And I'd also like to talk about in-person meetings, potentially doing that in November at the early head start. So anybody else have anything to add to the agenda or corrections? Assuming you've all looked at that and memorized it completely. Hearing none, we will go on. So I guess we need to vote to approve the agenda as was outlined with the additions I've suggested. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Okay, Terry, thank
I
you.
second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, great job, people. You're doing
Aye.
well. The minutes. Nick has done a stellar job in putting the minutes together for our September 15th meeting. And do I have any corrections to the minutes that people would like to chat about?
This is Sharon. I did review them. There was nothing.
Okay.
There was nothing gross that was out of order. I mean, you know, that's
No profanity?
as opposed to micro versus gross. That's anatomical terms. There was nothing grossly wrong with the notes. I would just maybe attach to the notes, listen to the audio.
What was that?
I would attach to the notes that there is audio available and it can be accessed and listened to, and whatever the medium is, if it's YouTube or however
It is YouTube.
Yeah, I would put that on there because then, you know, minutia can be corrected. But Nick, great job doing that, really.
Okay, Jenny, did you have a
Thank you.
comment? Okay, I guess not. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as submitted by wonderful Nick Putman?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye or raise your hand, or both.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, we are going to the new business section. At the top of that list is co-chair and or backup for Kelly. Has anyone had an epiphany over this last week, month, and decided that, yes, I want to partner with Kelly to be co-chair of this committee?
Terry agreed to do it if we had in-person meetings.
I said I would chair a meeting if we have them in person. I don't mind doing that. I've done that in the past.
Okay, we will use you as backup for in-person meetings. Thank you. Okay, guest speaker for November. We talked the last time about potential for guest speakers because we may or may not have a lot of compelling issues. So I wonder if anybody's had any additional thoughts on guest speakers. We are going to talk about the Glendiver walking path and the Rose City Golf Course path. We thought about last time having somebody talk about that.
What about I'm sorry, Daniel Sobing, Soebbing. And Daniel is an environmental planner with the city, and he is the one that coordinated the testimony for the zoning that was done recently of the golf course. And I've had an opportunity through other things I've been doing to chat with him. Very knowledgeable fellow. And he also had some interesting things. We were talking about the bluff, the restoration of the bluff, and perhaps whether or not we should start transitioning into more drought tolerant vegetation, including trees. Anyway, coordinating with the walking path and other things, this fellow would be tremendous. Daniel Sobing, Soebbing, and I can send whoever the contact information for him.
Do you want to reach out to him, Sharon,
I can do that.
and see if you might want to come and talk at our November meeting?
And that would be November 17th, correct? Yes, that's the third Thursday. Okay, the week before Thanksgiving. Okay. And if not, let's see, the 15th. Okay, could I give him the option of December 15th also? If
certainly.
I'll give him first, ask him for the 17th, and then maybe the option for the 15th. Very delightful person.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
Can I jump in on that too? That sounds awesome. I love the idea of, following up Terry and Ben's information about the walking path with someone from, you guys will know better than me, right? But some sort of whatever it is, if it's Metro or whether it's city or parks or BES or whoever, someone to come from their perspective of an update might be interesting to follow up. But I think we'll probably know more just after they after Terry and Ben talk tonight.
You mean someone from Portland Parks?
Yeah, my understanding, and again, I don't know, so maybe this is going to be interesting to hear from Terry and Ben, is that it's not just parks necessarily, but it might be that Metro's involved as well. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Ben had a conflict tonight, so he couldn't come. So he had talked to Paul Slyman of Metro on the 13th of October. Paul says that Metro manages Glendiver Park and that path, and they really encourage more use of the path and the restaurant. However, Portland Parks manages the Rose City Golf Course, and Paul has no visibility of pending projects for our course. So he said that Portland Parks manages that, and if we have a contact for Portland Parks, then he would be happy to reach out to them. Do we have a contact at Portland Parks other than the director?
As long as we're on the subject, we had those of us that worked on the community day at the golf course had an update meeting because they want to make it an annual thing. And we asked about an update for the walking path, and we're supposed to get one with the next update we got. Vincent that runs the golf didn't have anything more to say about it. I don't know any more about it other than it's my understanding that Metro is funding the study for it. So that's about as far as I can tell you on anything.
So Terry, can you reach out to your contact at the golf course to see who he would recommend we contact?
I can do that. Yeah. Vincent's the guy at the golf course, and I can reach out to him.
And I can reach out. I'd heard also there's obviously the conversation about inside the fence, but there's been conversation too about, you know, how people walk along the south side of the course on Tillamook, kind of on that dirt rooty path in between the road and the fence. And I had heard some scuttle from the Roseway Neighborhood Association folks that there were people talking about improving that instead of inside, but outside. So anyway, I'll reach out to that Roseway and see if they have a contact, and maybe there's some information there that we could have a speaker come talk about.
Yeah, Zach, that's one of the things that I brought up too, is that they if they could move the fence back and put the path on the outside. The plan is right now to have various openings so that you can get to the path, and the fence is not going to be continuous all the way around the golf course. There will be openings, but it seemed to me it made more sense to maybe move the fence back and put the path next to the street.
Yeah, those are great conversations. I would love for us to hear from the folks who are starting to think about it.
Okay, so we've had a couple of people join us. Ed Gorman, who was former vice chair of Rose City Park Neighborhood Association and a esteemed member of the committee for 112 years. So Ed is here to talk a little bit about 57th and Sandy and Alameda tonight. So we look forward to that. And we have someone else who has joined us, Therese. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Therese. I'm one of the neighbors that lives on 56th.
Okay, Therese.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for joining us. So I was going to move on to a Jenny item, but she is taking a quick break. So let's talk a little about speed bumps at 62nd, Halsey, and Broadway. Terry, you brought that up at the last meeting and asked that it be added to this agenda. I don't know anything about this.
I don't know anything about them either, other than they showed up one day. I saw the contractors out there working on them. I was very surprised about the ones on 62nd, not so surprised on the ones on Tillamook. Tillamook, they put speed bumps between 62nd and 72nd. I will say they're not as drastic as the ones that are east of there between 72nd and 82nd. Those things are ridiculously high, but they will still break merchandise in the back of my vehicle.
So Terry, is there some action you'd like the committee to take, or is this just an informational item?
The only action that I would like the committee to take is to let PBOT know that when they're planning something like this, to let us know so that we can comment. That's what got me is the fact that we knew nothing about it. I don't know if the people that lived on the streets knew anything about it, but we knew nothing about it. And it seems like they would, they're also putting in curb ramps on Hancock Street, I think 58th and 59th. Again, we haven't heard anything about that. And it just seems like they're not very forthcoming with information ahead of what they want to do, so that we can comment. I mean, I have no problem with the with the curb ramps, other than the cost of them, but there's got to be a reason for them. The point is that we're just not being informed like we should be.
So, Terry, to be specific, they're on 62nd between Halsey and Broadway.
You're talking about the speed bumps? No, they go all
Yeah.
the way up to Thompson.
So they're on 62nd though.
62nd, which is a concrete street versus an asphalt street. And they're on 62nd from Halsey to Thompson. I think there's one in each block, roughly. And then they did Tillamook from 62nd to 72nd, which didn't have them prior to doing that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next on my new business item is the land use list. So there has been some comment about who is entitled to receive the land use emails. And we have been, I guess, in my opinion, lax on who is added to that list. And so I guess I'd like to have a quick discussion about that in hopes of maybe only having the members of the committee on the land use list and not interested parties. What do people think?
Well, I would agree with that. I question whether the board member should be on the list or not. Should we have the board? I'm asking that question. I'm not saying one way or the other, but
I was going to ask what the purpose is. My understanding of the purpose of the email is not to debate, but to simply share information in preparation for a meeting. And I would be happy to be corrected if I'm wrong about that. And so part of me thinks like the more people that have information, the better. Especially since, again, my assumption was we were not supposed to be debating, but instead just sharing information in preparation. So that would be my pushback. It would be like, you know, if we're just sharing information, there's no harm in sharing information.
I'm sorry, Zach. So that means that you'd like a broader group of people in that land use list, or you're talking about the discussion that happens within the list?
Only a comment that I need to hear from people who are wanting it to be, and Sharon, you'd mentioned this, like having it to be fewer. For those who are wanting to have fewer on the list, I'm just curious what the concern is. If it is a list that is just for sharing information, which I would think, you know, we've talked about wanting more people to know more about what's going on as a philosophy and a principle. And so, but if I'm misunderstanding the concern, I would love to hear what that concern is.
From my perspective, and Mr. Gorman can speak to this because he was on the board and the committee at the time this listserv was developed, is that it has, to my knowledge, been for a very long time that the active board members or the active land use committee had a group list that they might go back and forth with discussions. And then, and some of them, I don't know, some of them, although it didn't happen with the land use committee, maybe there's other discussions that have happened on that. Later, then this Outlook program was set up, and I don't know, and again, Mr. Gorman can talk to this, whether that came through CNN to do this, because it became clearly understood that communications are considered public record and go into the public record and are kept and are, you can request via a public records request that discussion, which is one of the reasons why the former chair of the board was really tight in any sort of non-business of the neighborhood association discussion. Sometimes it drifted into political stuff or other stuff, and it just had no place. So to pass and share information, that comes through your agenda and the documents that you attach for the meeting itself. And that is, available to the public. And you have the email address on the website that people can write in, and it is then brought into the system. And if you have to reach out to people directly or pass that information on, you do that. I raise this concern because potential land use members who hadn't fully committed to being on the committee got added to this listserv and sat silent and not chiming in on anything. I had no idea they were there. And then all of a sudden there was this email that was so surprising to me, that this person wasn't and never had sat on the committee, all of a sudden was chiming in on a subject. It doesn't matter what the subject is, but then it made me wonder who is there. I want to know whom I am speaking to. Frankly, I want to know, I want to see the list. I want to know who's on there. I'm not going to send a generic email out into oblivion. I want to know who's on there and who's participating in it. So I personally would restrict this email system for board and committee business, and then have the email system on the website to bring in other people, and then the documents and the agenda for each meeting, whether it be committee or board, which is the public information. But you might want to talk to Ed and CNN. I'm sort of thinking CNN is the one that got this set up for us, but I'm not sure.
Okay, Sharon, you set me up.
I did. Hi, Ed. Nice
Hi,
to see you.
So I don't think CNN was involved at all. And I want to clarify what list you're talking about. There's the outlook.com email addresses that was established several years ago. The list that there's many lists within our server platform, and you can create new ones. You can get rid of them. They can be editor, rcpna.org, land use, board. And I don't think there's a dialogue that goes on in that platform. I think those are more opportunities or for people to send an email that hopefully would be read by someone, if it's the editor of the newsletter or someone in the land use committee or a board member. That was the purpose, and they get reviewed by an administrator. I think Jennifer is doing that. And even though I left a few years ago, and I've talked to Zach, and I'm considering if they're interested in just backing up current people. But anyway, I'm digressing. So the land use list is intended as basically a one-way communication to different departments, if you will, within Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, not intended for dialogue and discussion. And any personal, so going back to the creation of the outlook.com, things got sort of intertwined, personal communications as well as official communications. And so the outlook.com email addresses were set up for strictly business-oriented communication between members of the neighborhood association, board, officers, etc. And then if you wanted to talk personally about something, you have your own personal email addresses, and those are personal, and they're not, it's just like if you walk across the street. If I came over to your house, Sharon, and we chatted, I wouldn't expect that would be something that should be communicated to the general public. So that's my understanding, and I'm not a board member. I just historical memory.
Am I correct that these exchanges are public record?
I'm a private citizen right now, Sharon. Don't, I'm not stepping into this.
I don't know how they get entered into any kind of public record, Sharon, but in theory, I think that's true.
I think that Tamara, when she was trying to referee some of the dialogue that went back and forth, she reminded people several times that this was public record and whatever. So anyway, regardless.
I would like to move that the land use list is restricted to merely committee members that are officially part of the land use committee.
I second that.
Discussion?
So Kelly, I'm going to discuss something. Given as you're running, as I just stated, I've openly had a dialogue with Zachary and I still have access to the list. I can, if you will allow me to share the screen, I've just logged in and I can show you who's on the list. If you'd like that. Zach's nodding his head, so.
Sure, why not?
And yeah, okay.
I have to give you permission, just say.
No, you've done it. It's already there. So there's the list. Those are the names that are on it. That's the totality of people right now. And if there are some who don't belong on it, Jennifer or I can edit it. If there are some people who need to be added, Jennifer and I can edit it.
Yeah, Zoe's no longer on the committee.
Neither is Vicky.
Neither's
Tamara's no
Vicky,
longer.
neither's Tamara, and Stephanie Whitlock. Is that a new person or am I?
Nope.
I don't recognize that person either. Yeah.
And Nick Gross is not officially on the committee. I did get an email from him that I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Is that the total of the list, Ed?
Right now, that's the current list.
Well, this can't be true because Jenny isn't on it. Nick Putman isn't on it. And I believe they're still getting those communications.
Well, and
Jenny
Zoe's
on it.
not part of the committee anymore either.
Right, but Jenny Lyman is
Oh,
on.
Jenny is there.
Yeah. So.
But Nick isn't.
Nick, Stephanie.
And Andrew
Tamara,
isn't.
Vicky. Yeah, interesting. Well, you've been sending them to board members also, and sometimes there's personal email addresses attached. So I say clean this up.
So is there agreement which names come off? Jenny, Nick?
I can
email
I think
me.
Richard is the keeper of this list, Ed.
Nah, I think it's Jenny and I'm the backup.
Jennifer, you mean?
Jennifer, yeah, Sandhouse.
So she's still.
As far as I know.
Okay, well, I'll get back in touch with you, Ed, and we can curate the list.
You'll clean it up.
I would just add one little thing, which is I'm happy to be outvoted on this one. That's totally fine. But my understanding, having worked in the public sector, is anything you write an email, you should be willing to go on your porch and scream to the public. Like that's how open you should be in what you're writing. And so I think I am perfectly comfortable with anyone being on this list as long as we know who it is. Like to your point, Sharon, just knowing who that is important so we know who's getting it. And we could revisit, we could share who that is. But I struggle with the idea of withholding information when just like 10 minutes ago, Terry was sharing a frustration and we were all kind of nodding along when we were frustrated with PBOT not sharing information. And now here we are talking about restricting information. So again, I would probably just suggest, and I'm again happy to be outvoted here, but that we allow people to stay on the list, but that we know who those people are.
So Zach, I'm unclear as to how you get on the list then. You just express an interest and then you're added to the list?
Yep, that would be all it would be. Someone who's just interested. And then we let everyone on our committee know, hey, so-and-so has been added. And so now people know when they're sending an email that Frank down the street is another one getting it. anyone can see this list anytime they want.
So who decides who gets added to the list if they're interested?
I'd just say the chair. Chair gets contacted and the chair says, hey, Ed, or hey, Jennifer, so-and-so would like to receive these updates. That would be my procedure.
So if Merrill wanted to be on the list, you're okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that is a different approach. So shall we have a motion on the floor to restrict the list to committee members only? And so as I understand it, the land use list would then go out to board members because they would be interested parties, and the land use committee official members of that. So if that's the motion, then I guess I need people to vote on that, and then we'll vote on Zachary's motion to add people to the list next. So all those in favor of the motion on the floor, which is to restrict the list to just, oh, Sharon?
I have a question. Ed Gorman said that he was on the list, or he somehow receives emails within this system, but he is doing a service for the neighborhood association. So even though he isn't an active member or of the board or a committee, I would still grant him access to the system because he's doing a service. Does that make sense? He's a volunteer helper.
So Sharon, I'm a legacy administrator from my previous tenure. Okay. And so I don't need to be added to the list. Jennifer and I get prompts when an email is received in this
info
platform. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And then we have, there's a lot of spam that comes in, and you can just decline that, discard it, and you can consign that spam address to hell. And so that we never, receive them again. And so
okay,
I don't need to be added. And
okay,
just to muddy the waters here, here's the current board list, and I'm just showing you. And I can make a copy of this and send it to the board, and then you guys can, both of those lists, everybody on the board, on the land use committee for the other one, and you guys can mull it over and decide what you want to do, and we can make changes later.
Yeah.
Rather than, we probably don't want to spend too much time chewing on this, and I don't intend to be speaking that much.
I do have one thought here, and something that Kelly brought up. There are likely times when we would want to maybe do something offline. I might want to talk to Kelly offline, or Sharon offline, or somebody, or even you, Ed, offline, and would put my own email address in there. Please contact me at my own email address. And I'm not sure I want that to go out to a lot of people I don't know. So that's just a thought. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but when I say offline, I mean outside of the server, where we can have a discussion on something.
Okay, well, I have a motion on the floor and a second, so I guess I'd like a vote on whether to restrict the list to merely committee members. And if you think it should be a broader list of people, maybe that the chairman decides to add people like Nick Gross, who are, interested parties. Anyway, vote no. So all those in favor of restricting the list of committee members, raise your hand.
Well, you can't see my hand.
Okay. All those opposed, say, or raise your hand. Jenny, I can't see your hand.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still making my way home. I don't know. I'm a little ambivalent on this issue. Am I required to vote?
Well, we're kind of tied.
I can see both sides. I know, I feel like I can see both sides. I don't know.
Well, we're
Do
kind
you-
of tied now, so
Kelly, do you have to have a quorum of some sort for this to happen? And how many members are there?
we have a quorum. We have
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 committee members here on the
Okay.
Zoom call. So that's a quorum.
I mean, I don't know.
So was it 3-3?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess I just maybe like to hear a little bit more about the concern with why we don't want people that aren't on the committee on that. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I can see values to both. I don't know.
Well, one other concern, and I just thought of this, is that somebody that doesn't agree or totally agrees or whatever could take the email and spread it to one of their mailing lists or to their supporters if it was political. I mean, if it happened to, dwell on politics in some way. And unfortunately,
but a board member could do that too, right? I mean,
a board member could do that, but I think a board member is not going to do that. I mean, I think we have ethics, but somebody from outside may not have the same ethics that a board member has.
Okay. By executive decision, we are going to move this to the next meeting on November. Everybody think about this. In the meantime, I'm going to take the people off the list that have never been board members. I'm going to leave people on like Nick Gross who have an interest, and then we'll talk about this in November. Moving right along.
I have a quick question. When I go to my Outlook, my neighborhood association Outlook, I don't have any emails there since the first week of September. Because I thought we were supposed to use Outlook. Otherwise, I get everything through Gmail.
I include you as Gmail, Nick, and you're on the board list, but you're not on the land use list. So we'll correct that. So you should get the emails from me and others who are sending things to the land use list.
And Outlook as well?
Via Outlook, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ed, I'm not sure if Outlook's populating to my email, to my Gmail at this point again. I didn't do anything, but I seem to be, I don't think I got Kelly's last email, and that's the reason why I'm saying that.
You're addressing me, Terry?
Yes, sir.
Are you looking for some IT help with your
I
Outlook
might
account?
need some, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Okay, then I'm just going to briefly read this item that I got from Nick Gross, which is applicable. He says, this past spring, I attended a land use meeting. Prior to the meeting, I replied to the email thread with my thoughts on one of the agenda topics. My reply was to the RCPNA email list. During the meeting, it was firmly and explicitly explained to me that the RCPNA and the land use email list discussions were not to be used to voice personal thoughts or opinions on subject matter to be discussed at meetings. I raise this concern because I constantly see people voicing their personal and biased opinions that do not represent RCPNA and often are filled with misinformation. I kindly request that you remind people that the email list is intended for the board to share information to interested neighbors and not a forum to allow people to spread misinformation. So we don't have to take any action on that. It's just something interesting that Nick sent me. Okay, next item is in-person meetings. Quickly, is everybody okay if we meet in November in person at Early Head Start? Allison has not been able to help me with hybrid meetings, and in talking to Ed, that would be difficult. So Sharon, if you're okay and everybody else is okay,
I'm fine.
I would like to set up the November meeting at Early Head Start, and I'll send out the information for that.
Mr. Sobing if he comes, I'm not sure what the city's thing is. Would he have the ability to be available via Zoom? Probably not, huh? He'd have to come in person.
Correct. Ed is still convinced that we could do a hybrid meeting, and he has some technology to make that happen, including a microphone and a camera.
Okay,
but he
great.
hasn't volunteered to come to all of my upcoming meetings
I see. Okay.
until I die.
Jenny, you're bringing cookies. Okay.
I was literally typing that in the chat, Sharon. You read my mind. Jenny, you're on.
She's bringing cookies. All right.
Okay, Zachary, the next thing on the list is the unimproved streets in Rose City Park. And I wonder if we can have the first part of that discussion in the next 15 minutes, or would you like me to push this to 8:30?
No, it's all good. I just received a message. Folks, I was supposed to step out at 8 and I was told I don't need to go at 8, so I can stay, so we can do it whenever.
Okay. So unimproved streets in Rose City Park. And before we get into that discussion, I'm going to read a little tidbit we got from Merrill Schneider. Sharon had forwarded the draft of these letters to Merrill, and he commented on the letters. But he also wanted to talk about Zachary's conflict of interest. So I'm going to read this briefly, and then we're going to talk about it quickly. Zachary has a very serious conflict of interest here. He's on a staff of Oregon Walks, and his job is to promote walkability. He can't fairly represent the interests of all members of our neighborhood association given that conflict of interest. He needs to recuse himself on this matter, both as a member of Land Use and Transportation and as vice chair of the board. If he is unwilling to recuse himself, the Land Use and Transportation Committee and the board need to disqualify him from participating in this matter. I also have, because Nick Gross was copied on this item from Merrill, and we'll talk a little bit about what Merrill said about the sidewalks. He said, regarding the latest email from Merrill and the idea that Zachary has a conflict of interest because he promotes walkability, this made my stomach turn. Doesn't our neighborhood support walkability? We should be celebrating the fact that we have someone who is devoting their time to help increase access for people and children to walk, particularly to parks and schools. The city constructs sidewalk infill projects all the time. It does not come at a cost to all property owners. So I would like to have a quick discussion about what the committee feels about Zachary's conflict of interest. As chairman or co-chairman or whatever I am, I think it's ridiculous that that he would have to recuse himself because of the proximity of his property or because of his role in his employment. It's like I'm an architect and I'd have to recuse myself from every deal that dealt with architecture, or Nick would have to do that. Or if we had to recuse ourselves from something that was adjacent to our property or in our direct neighborhood. So I'm definitely opposed to this, but I am open to a discussion from the committee.
Well, this is Sharon. If you, as an architect, were discussing a project that you were going to be working on, and the land use board came up with that, of course, that would be, if it wasn't a direct conflict, and it's an appearance of a conflict. And so there are some questions here to be discussed. But one thing I'd like to know is, how did Nick, it's not this Nick, right? It's a different Nick. Is it Nick Putnam who wrote that, or Nick?
Yeah, Nick Gross.
How did he get that? How did he get Merrill's email?
He is on the list. He is on the list. I forwarded the email.
But Merrill can't access into the land use
Correct.
committee.
I forwarded Merrill's letter. He asked me to forward that to all the committee members. So I forwarded it to the committee members, and Nick Gross is on the distribution list for land use and transportation.
This is exactly why he needs to be removed, and non-committee members need to be removed. This is a perfect example from that list. I'm sorry. No,
Okay,
This
any-
could, this could come up. He should be here at this meeting and bring it up. If you had Merrill's email and you forwarded it to the committee, then that would be a topic on the agenda, which you did, and Nick should have come to the meeting to discuss it. But
Okay, getting back to the issue at hand. What does the committee feel about Zachary needing to recuse himself? I'd like to hear from people.
Well, here's my thought. He's getting paid to promote sidewalks. So maybe we get new sidewalks in Portland or in Rose City Park. Well, gee, that might be a bonus for Zach. He might get a bonus for doing that. I'm not saying that he would, but there's a financial matter there with the sidewalks, and it directly could relate to Zach. And that's where I see a conflict of interest. I go back to when I owned some Verizon stock and we talked about a cell tower, and I had to recuse myself, even though it was the little bit of stock I owned wasn't going to be affected, whatever happened to that cell tower. So I just see this as the potential of a conflict of interest, being that he is being paid to do what he's doing. He's a lobbyist, in other words.
But Zachary's not in the business of selling sidewalks, I don't believe.
No, but it could affect job reviews. It could affect, even if it isn't a direct money in the palm of the hand, it could come through. There's conflicts and there's appearances of conflicts, and this could appear as a conflict.
I don't know, maybe anyone who owns a car should not take part in any conversation about streets.
Well, at times when discussions do come up, I say I am a homeowner. I have 3 cars in my household. I have a 1-car garage and 2 cars that park in the street. I state that forthright so people know exactly where I'm coming from.
And Nick,
okay, thank you. Terry?
Nick, if you're saying that anybody
Jenny
owns a car shouldn't talk about streets, then anybody that owns a bicycle shouldn't talk about bicycle lanes.
Yeah, there we go. So we can all go home, or we can all turn off our Zoom and
can we hear from Jenny? Jenny, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jenny?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm in your camp, Kelly. I think that I don't see the connection between how he benefits professionally from advocating for sidewalks in the neighborhood. And I think the part that really bothered me about the letter was kind of the second part where it was saying that because he lives nearby, I feel like all of us are here because we want to advocate and talk about things that are nearby our homes. So like that second piece is completely irrelevant. But yeah, I don't see how Zach benefits professionally from this.
I have a comment about that. In a prior discussion, the former chair negated my vote and proclaimed that we had a 400-foot rule, and because I lived within 400 feet of an intersection, my vote was canceled. One, we have no such thing as a 400-foot rule in the state of Oregon at all, but that was self-declared by this person. So I do agree with you that we all have an interest. We all live in the neighborhood within the boundaries of it, but I don't know. You do have to state whether it's going to bring an advantage to you or not. And I think that that's just honesty and transparency. So I'd like to hear from Zach. What does Zach think?
Okay.
And then real quick, if we flip it around about the, adjacency or that 400-foot rule, that seems to.
There is no 400-foot rule.
Okay. Because I was going to say, we've had conversations for months about the stuff on Sacramento, and that wouldn't apply. Okay.
It does not apply. It never applied.
Okay.
We don't have it in the state of Oregon, period.
Okay, thank you. Pass.
To me? Thanks, Jenny. I saw that email. I appreciate it. The concern, took it seriously and actually spent some significant time doing some research. about what is a conflict of interest. It's not just a lay term. It's not just a theory. There's extremely robust legal precedent. There's Oregon statute that the conflict of interest is based on. So I actually went and looked up the statute. I'll read it to you. It's ORS 244.020. An actual conflict of interest means any action or decision or recommendation by a person acting in a capacity as a public official, the effect of which would be the private pecuniary benefit or detriment of the person or the person's relative or any business with which the person or relative of the person is associated, unless the pecuniary benefit or detriment arises out of circumstances described in some subsections below. I won't bore you with all the subsections. I can just give you my word, I suppose. I think that's where we're at. I have absolutely no pecuniary benefit. Personally, I have no familial pecuniary benefits. In my view, I have zero conflict of interest as a result. There's no financial gain for me to face. So in my view, it's shut, but I am also willing to abide by the committee's wishes if they so choose. But when I look at the actual law, not just our feelings about the law, but the actual law, it's pretty clear.
Zach, I was going to say, how do you define the word business in what you read, Zach?
How do I define the word business? I mean, I'm sure the state defines the word business. We'd be happy to do that. But again, the definition of business is not terribly important. You have to have a financial benefit from that business. And I don't have a financial benefit from doing any of that work that those letters are talking about.
And just to clarify, this is like a nonprofit, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Jenny, what other thoughts?
Similar to Terry, I was wondering what the definition of public official, because it seemed like that code section that you were reading only applied to public officials, and I would assume that we don't meet that definition here, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that very well could be. I'm
sorry, I think we need to look at what has actually been signed. What do the conflict of interest forms that were signed for CNN, what do they state? And perhaps we need to look at those.
Yeah, my understanding, and that's great, we can do that. My understanding is that those are written based on the state statute about conflict of interest. And so it's like, that is an informal document that we hold that is actually built on the foundation of the conflict of interest statute. So it doesn't have a more restrictive, but it in fact is just guided by the state statute.
Right, but what you actually signed was, it says the standard of behavior for this neighborhood association. And it says this includes avoiding actual conflicts of interest as well as perceptions of conflict of interest. So this is what was signed. I have advocated revising and looking at the conflict of interest form and revising it. And it's, to my knowledge, these conflict of interest forms are required by CNN. CNN is the one that has you sign these for their liability insurance.
So I would like to put this to bed as quickly as possible. I would like to make a motion that we don't recognize Zachary's as a conflict of interest and let him participate in the discussion of this item. Second.
Me too. Third.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Would there not be a discussion?
No, we're done discussing. Okay. So I have 1, 2, 2. Nick, you're a yes. Okay. Terry, you're a no.
That's correct.
Sharon, you're a no.
I'm a no because it's a premature vote.
Okay. And Zachary, you're a yes or a no?
I'm an abstention.
Smart move.
Okay.
Smart.
So I have 1, 2, 3 yeses and 2 no's and an abstention. So Zach, you're in on this discussion. Okay, moving right along. The next item is the unimproved streets in Rose City Park that we have talked about for 112 years. And Zach and I made our best efforts at revising those letters one more time. And we got some feedback from people, including Sharon and Terry. I asked Sharon to edit the letter as she saw fit. I don't know if you're prepared to present that, Sharon, or not.
This is what I will state. I did not type it out, but I would state to Mr. Saul that the neighborhood land use committee is not going to take it up, or the board is not going to take it up, and that he solicit neighbors to procure this and put it forth himself, and that we not take a position on it at all.
So let me read you what Raymond said to me tonight as an FYI. I'll go to the last two paragraphs. I have been disappointed by the level of opposition and animosity my proposals have provoked from the committee members. Letters to Commissioner Hottersty and Director Long that Kelly and Zach have drafted no longer reflect my views, and I do not want to be associated with them. When I approached the committee in January, I was a supporter of neighborhood association. Based on my experience with your committee, I have changed my opinion. I don't think Raymond is interested in pursuing this at all further.
Not as a private citizen with groups of similarly interested people?
I can reach out and ask him, but I would doubt that.
I would suggest that he do that himself and not put the board or the neighborhood association in that. But the letters, if those were redrafts of the letters that we had talked about, they seemed very similar to the prior letters, and they still included discussion about the streets. And if I was going to write a letter like that, it would be, there has been an expression of concern about sidewalks around the parks, to wit, Normandale and Rose City Park. Is there something that the Portland Parks Bureau is considering about putting sidewalks in? Period. That would be it. Nothing to do with streets, nothing to do with, streets headed to the parks, anything of that, safety of streets, nothing of that nature, unless the neighborhood association engaged neighbors, property owners who could be directly affected by anything that would be happening. So it would be a 2 to 3 sentence thing. How can we help you? There's been expression of interest around sidewalks in the parks. How can we help you? Or is there any interest in the Parks Bureau doing this?
So the letter that I edited is on your screen. I tried to take out all references to side streets or anything else. This only talks about, in my
There's
opinion.
no letter up.
Pardon me?
There's no letter up. I just see your faces.
It's the YouTube screen right
Yeah,
now.
you did something where you got the screen frozen and the faces are on the side.
Terry, you did
Really?
Kelly, you just chose the wrong option there to throw up on your screen.
Yeah, that's what I
We all
think.
look terrible except for Sanjeev. Oh, maybe Chris Schneider. He looks okay.
Stop share.
Stop share?
Yeah.
There we go. There we
Go
go.
to share again and pick the right screen to share.
How about that?
There you go.
That's your letter. Yeah. The problem I've had from the beginning of this conversation is that the affected homeowners on these streets have not been involved. And I think we're sidestepping the fact that if we're having a discussion, they should be formally invited and be here for that discussion. Now, if we're going to have a in-person meeting at the next meeting, it might be something that we can invite and get their take on on the streets that border their properties that don't have sidewalks and see what they, because they could be up for a big expense, you know, $80,000 or something. And that's, I can't advocate for that as a board member to put a lien on somebody's property.
But this letter only deals with the sidewalks around the park.
But you make multiple references to unimproved streets, principal routes, multiple references, including you've got that attached map to it.
Well, the map is going to have to be revised. So
why even say the unimproved streets? Why even mention it?
I'm happy to jump in here. So a couple thoughts. One is it is not the people who live there who are the only people who are impacted. So if we were only talking about, now they are the only people whose frontages is impacted, but the families, the kids, the whoever who are using these streets are also impacted. And so the conversation does not need to be just them, but it needs to be all. Yet another reason why we should have these meetings, you know, far and widespread as much as possible. The second thing is, if we did invite these folks for a conversation, we have very little information to share. This letter is so watered down at this point that it is purely just a, hey, can we have a discussion about the city's long-term plans for completing streets in fully developed neighborhoods? And that is...
Then state
Karen,
that in the letter.
And that's what I thought we did state. And so if we need to tinker a little bit, that's fine. But the way I thought we tried to express this was, there's these unimproved streets. We don't have a mechanism for improving them. They're all over the city. Can we talk about a long-term plan in the city for addressing that? If we don't have a plan, it will never get addressed. And places like Tillamook will never, ever have sidewalks. And so to gather information and then say to folks in our neighborhood association, hey, we gathered this information, let's have a conversation, to me seems more doing our jobs, doing our due diligence to gather information as the people who are deeply involved, rather than getting people's hackles up and having no information, and then saying, oh, but we don't know anything. We just wanted to let you know we were going to try and find out things. That seems like the wrong order of operations. So that's why I'm fully in support of sending this to try and gather some information.
But we did gather information when we invited the people from Peabot here, and you know, they looked at the streets and they gave us their best estimate of potential costs and what the city's outlook is on it at this point, that they don't particularly want to put pressure on landowners to pay for sidewalks that border their property. And I don't want to give any sort of push to the city to change that mind, to change their mind on that. And that's what bothers me. I mean, that some of these property owners that live on, that have side properties on Tillamook and on Hancock Street in particular, might end up getting a lien against their house. And I just cannot go there.
So I hear you on that, Terry, and I'm going to translate that to what I hear. What I hear is, I am okay with us never having sidewalks on certain streets in our neighborhood because we're unwilling to have the conversation on how to complete those streets. Now that'll be my kids and my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids and everyone else is in this rooms. And that seems like an abdication of our responsibility to have a community conversation on how to solve this. And if we just continue to kick the can down the road, it'll be $80,000 now, it'll be $100,000 in a decade, and it'll be $50,000 or $150,000 in 50 years. It'll never get done. So let's bite the bullet and let's have a conversation that's authentic, and we may come to the conclusion that in Portland these will never be completed, and that would be unfortunate. But at least we had the conversation and tried to talk about a holistic plan, and we are instigating that conversation authentically as a gathering of information. To me, that is honorable and that is the right thing to do.
But let's have the conversation with the property owners before we go back to the city. That's what I'm getting at. We need to have a conversation with them, period.
Let's include them. If you say include everybody, let's include them right from the get-go.
Absolutely. And we haven't done that.
I agree with you there, but I think you're missing what I'm really expressing, which is that is a communal space. That is a space that all people benefit from, not just the landowners, and that's all people who pay the price of them being incomplete. So this conversation is not just about them; it's about everyone in our community. So the conversation should be open to all, which is why we should spread this far and wide. I'm with you on that.
All right, let's have it with all. Let's have it with all, including the property owners. And you're correct. It does affect people who are walking to and fro along the street, but the onus and the burden is borne by the property owner to put in the sidewalks. So they're a very important part of this conversation up front.
And I think I've said this before too, Zach. I grew up in the house that I now own. I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 68 years next month. I walked to kindergarten on those streets up to Rose City Park School. Rice didn't open until my first grade. And then I went to school 5th through 8th grade up to Rose City, and I used those streets either to ride a bicycle or to walk on, because I did bike to school part of the time. So I've used those streets, and there are other routes. Thompson is fully sidewalked. I use Thompson part of the time too, but I remember walking on those streets in particularly Tillamook Street.
Yeah, personally, I don't think that's acceptable.
Kelly, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Other thoughts from committee members? Was that you, Nick?
Yeah. Well, the letter is not specifying a specific remedy, correct?
It's just asking the Parks Bureau to consider adding sidewalks around the parks.
Right.
If the letter just stated that, I would be fine with it, but it doesn't. It gives reference to the unimproved streets and therefore plants the seed that somehow those unimproved streets are unsafe. And without the neighbors, the landowners with a heads up on that, it just doesn't feel right.
Ed?
Yeah, Kelly, before I retired, I worked a lot with PBOC. Typically, the city for new developments requires a half-street development, and it doesn't impact the neighbors across the street. It's strictly on the lot or properties being developed. Reading your letter, it seems like you're focusing on the park borders, and perhaps an argument could be made that Parks and PBOT could come up with a hybrid of a half-street development for a developer to upgrade just those streets, the half street and the sidewalk and the curb on the park borders, perimeters. Might be worth trying and leave the private property owners out of it. And Terry's worry about the people across the street getting dinged.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Maren. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Again, this is my first meeting, and thank you for making it open. I couldn't raise my hand, otherwise I would have done that. I think I lost my control for ability to do reactions. I do appreciate Zach's point in that I think that there is a time to kind of have that holistic conversation to involve all individuals with people that use it and also the homeowners around, because we're all part of the same community. So we all need a voice. So as kind of a homeowner, not in the affected areas, but around the affected areas, just reading this letter, it seems to be geared towards, again, the second paragraph, as some members of the neighborhood have expressed, and and that is probably, a completely 100% accurate, but I would suggest, I like the idea of opening up a space for all people of the community, homeowners and also users, to come to be able to help message this letter so that it is, encompassing all voices, not just, the, folks that of, usage.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Someone mentioned the point about not wanting to plant the seed in Peabot's head, that it was potentially unsafe in the area. And, you know, my experience is that that is exactly a seed that needs to be planted and there needs to be discussion about, because when using that space and walking down Tillamook, you end up forced into the street and having to walk down the street or on a gravel shoulder. And I've been surprised by cars coming up behind or in front. Now I'm a 40-year-old man and I can kind of really fend for myself and I'm not really too worried about it. But when I think about my, you know, my 13-year-old walking through there with his friends, I feel a little bit more worried about it. And personally, I worry too, because, you know, I'm not invincible and I'm not I can make mistakes too. So I do think that the seed needs to be planted about the safety. And I think that's exactly the opportunity that we need to explore.
And that was my comment. This is Sharon. That was my comment about not planting the seed. And my furtherance is that is don't plant the seed without giving the property owners a heads up. That's all I'm asking for, is to give them common courtesy. They will bear the brunt of the cost of this. Give them the common courtesy of a heads up.
What do you suppose, Sharon and Terry, what would be the threshold that would make you feel like they were given a heads up?
A direct letter from the neighborhood association.
Inviting them to a meeting of discussion.
Flyer on their doorstep.
I mean, we're talking about what, maybe 10 or 12 houses that on Tillamook and Hancock, if you're looking at Hancock as well. 62nd to about, what is it, 59th, I think, or halfway to 59th. So you're talking about not a whole lot of households, but they need to be involved before we do anything. I mean, I think we could be considered liable if we don't bring them into the conversation before, if we're mentioning anything about those streets.
Okay, I have lost all patience with this discussion. So I would like to never discuss it again. I will send a nice apology letter to Raymond, but I don't see anything viable moving forward. I am certainly not willing to invite all the neighborhood households in to throw fits about having to improve these sidewalks. It's just not something that I'm in favor of us doing.
And you don't want to you don't want to set up a target.
No.
Yeah. It would be difficult. I admit it.
I just want to voice that I understand your frustration, Kelly, but this is exactly how our kids and our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids are not going to have complete sidewalks. It's because people like us who come together to do exactly this, improve our neighborhood. I think that's in our bylaws. Improve our neighborhood, get frustrated, and then quit and move on to the next thing. And so if we want to bear that, then we can bear that. But it is frustrating. And I feel you, Kelly. I'm feeling real frustrated right now too. We spent a lot of time meeting and talking and going through this, and then we're going to go, meh. And that is a shame, and that's a loss. And I think we're abdicating our responsibilities.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for how the committee would like to move forward on this issue.
Would we want to propose an in-person community meeting, promoted with flyers to discuss unimproved streets and roads in the neighborhood? Is that too general?
No, it's very specific. That's great.
The only thing that I when I think of an unimproved road, I think of a road that isn't even paved. Now, these are paved, so I think the word sidewalks needs to be in there. Streets without sidewalks might be a better comment than unimproved roads.
Okay, Jenny,
Um, uh, is the committee willing to send a letter just asking for this, like talking about the sidewalks at the park, like bordering the park, or you know, Zach, Kelly, does that not mean the intent because we're not giving access to the park? Like, can we water it down further and just talk about sidewalks at the park, or no?
we could do that and send it to Commissioner Long, or not Commissioner Long, Director Long. We could do that.
Zach?
I think that's totally fine as add a letter to her, but that doesn't do anything about the access. You know, the 6-year-old wanting to go play on the swing, right? And is walking literally in the middle of the street. I live right around the corner. Come hang out and have a beer with me, and we'll watch it happen all day. So again, that's great. We can edit this letter to Commissioner Long, and that's fine. The meat of this is a community conversation, not just in Rose City Park, but in Portland, is saying, all right, so what are we going to do about this?
Then let's have the community conversation as per Nick's.
Is the intent to have
query.
the city facilitate a conversation?
Perhaps that's all it is. Saying, hey, city, put that on your agenda. What's the long-term conversation? Maybe it's totally wishful thinking. I can acknowledge that too. There's a lot of challenges in our infrastructure, and it might just be wishful thinking.
Zach, why aren't you doing that as a through your employment? Because your employment is promoting sidewalks. So why aren't you just having a general community meeting citywide, or promoting that type of an idea through your employment?
Oh, we totally are all the time. And I think there is some power in us doing it, I suppose. But it's meaningful too when it comes from people like us, who are just people who experience it on the day to day, who are voters and who care.
But see, then the property owners on the sidewalk, if we do it, the property owners on the sidewalk become the target to pay for it. And
but we don't know
where
that.
I have a problem.
Sorry, Terry. But that's the thing, is we don't know that, Terry. And that's why the whole point of this letter is to say, what is the plan here? That is one potential thing. The city mandates property owners finish their frontage. That is a possible thing. Very unlikely politically. We heard that from the guy who came and spoke with us, Mauricio.
Steve Townsend.
Steve, there we go. Very unlikely. Politically, completely a killer, right? So, okay, if that's not on the table, which it sounds to me like it's not on the table, it hasn't been on the table for decades, what are we going to do?
But I don't want to dish it up, even if it's not on the table. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't want to dish it up to property owners in our neighborhood. I don't think it's up to us to do that.
Just give them a heads up.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be a secret to the city. I mean, it's not like the city doesn't know there's unimproved streets until we tell them. Like, they know where those are. I guess I have a hard time understanding what the risk is. If we're really just like asking the city to facilitate a conversation, I don't see a risk.
I don't think the overall community is satisfied with an unfinished city.
Good night.
Yeah, I just mean, like, what's the risk to the neighboring property owners if really what we're just asking for is for the city to facilitate a conversation and tell us what the rules are and start talking about it.
We've had that conversation already when 2 people from the city came. So we've done that.
Oh, okay. I think I missed that.
What you're trying, there's a furtherance here. You're asking specifically for sidewalks at the parks, but also implying the routes to get to the parks are unsafe and unimproved or unfinished. And all I am asking is let the property owners know about starting this conversation and bring them into it, because even though maybe there's not political will right now from the city to force the property owners to do this, it is one potential outcome and they deserve a heads up. That's all I'm saying.
I'll ditto that.
So that's fine. We can give them a heads up. I think everyone deserves a heads up. But yes, okay. So maybe we draft the letter to the office and say, we talked to your staff. Your staff said there's no plan in place. Can we talk about what a plan is? Can you facilitate that conversation? And just stop there.
But we're still pushing the button. We're pushing the button, even though maybe it's a
Yes.
dead button. We're pushing the button, and I don't want to push that button until the property owners are into the conversation and understand what it's all about.
We are absolutely pushing the button, and I'm willing to do that. I would vote tonight, right now. I'm willing to do that because if we do not push that button, if we don't push the envelope, the status quo will remain, and kids will walk in the middle of the street in our neighborhood.
I did it as a kid.
Don't the bylaws say something about notifying people who are affected? I think the bylaws do. And granted, we're undergoing a bylaws review. You need to look at your articles of incorporation. There are several mechanical things that need to be done. You just want to be careful, tread lightly.
But we don't have to distribute flyers to every interested neighbor. We
Not
can
everyone's
publicize.
affected neighbors.
Can we put them on telephone poles, things like that? Acceptable?
I think you need to deliver it directly to the houses that have property that doesn't have a sidewalk on these streets. And so you're talking, if you're talking about Tillamook and Hancock, you're talking about between 62nd and I think halfway in the block on 59th. Halfway to the block on 59th. So
Mr.
you're not
Gorman.
talking about a huge number of households.
And there's other streets around Normandale.
So
Mr. Gorman.
Kelly, can you just make it a lead article in the next newsletter and schedule something after that? That hits every doorstep in the neighborhood.
Not a bad idea.
Those who are interested will participate. Those who aren't won't.
That sounds great. I'm totally supportive of that. I think we need to do our due diligence, that we get the city on board that says, yeah, we'll facilitate that conversation. Because if we write this as a lead article in the newsletter, promising this facilitated conversation, and the city's like, no, we're not interested, then we have lost our credibility. And so it seems to me that tonight we need to say, yep, we're going to reach out to the city to facilitate this conversation about long-term planning. And we are going to allow everyone to know about it in our neighborhood by putting it in the newsletter.
I think we need to let everybody know before we contact the city, period.
Okay.
But the city already pretty much told us that there weren't any avenues to fund these sidewalks other than neighbors paying for it. I mean, that's what Steve Townsend and his two people said. We didn't qualify as opportunity zones. We didn't qualify as underprivileged enough, and there weren't any funds available, and city council was not going to compel property owners. So I thought we already checked that box, Zachary.
So why are we beating that box then? Why are we keep doing it?
And I think you're right, Kelly, because somewhere in the back of my mind, within the last couple of months, there was something about putting sidewalks into Cully. And actually, these were totally unimproved streets. We're talking about dirt streets. And there was a liability on the homeowners or on the property owners. And that's a low income, and this was a low income area, but there was still some liability to the
Anyway, I guess if Zachary, if you're willing to do a little bit more research to see if there's any avenue that we can pursue, then I'm certainly willing to consider this again in another meeting. Okay.
Did he speak?
He said yes.
Oh, okay. And
So
the
he and I put our heads together, and we'll see if we can figure out a way to approach the city that would be better than how we did before. Okay, moving right along. Safe route to school, Sacramento and 64th. I got an email from Scott Cohen when I asked him about the ADA ramp. And he said there were no sidewalks or concrete work that's a part of that. So they're only dealing in temporary materials. So he essentially said, no, we're not going to add an ADA ramp there. Next is the slow streets, the concrete bollards and signage. So I sent the latest bollard layout. Or no, I sent the visuals that Scott shared with me to Merrill, and I was hoping I would hear from him about his contact with the head of PBOT, and I have not heard anything. So unless anybody else has heard anything, I don't have anything else to offer on this particular issue. The
As far as I know. As
the
far as I know.
candlesticks. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, as far as I know, Mr. Schneider did contact Mr. Warner, I believe that's his name, the head of PBOT, with no response to date.
Just
Okay.
one comment here regarding bollards and those things in general. I had a conversation with Allison this morning, and it was about a totally different subject, but she mentioned to me that daily she gets a complaint about the big cement things, the big cement bollards that are in the roadways, whether it's not all our neighborhood, but within CNN. And so I just wanted to throw that out.
Okay, and just a reminder, we are taking the concrete bollard layout, the revised one with only 7 bollards, to the neighborhood board for approval at the November meeting.
The planters, you mean?
The planters, yes. Sorry.
Has Scott got that approved yet? Do you know?
I don't know. I think he's waiting for us, and I told him
well,
we would.
Scott will be the speaker at the CNN Land Use and Transportation meeting next Wednesday.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, next is the Red Lane pilot project at Sandy 57th and Alameda. And that work is now in process. I don't know if it's complete. My good friend Ed Gorman has put together some visuals that I would like to have him go through. If I share the screen with you, sir, do you want to chat a little bit about the conversations that you've had with Scott?
Well, you've been privy to the one conversation I've had with Scott. Basically, I just reached out to him and copied you and Zachary, and expressed some improvements that they could make for safety, coordinating the bike crossings now that the eastbound motor vehicle traffic is not supposed to go through that intersection, and coordinating the bike crossings, which they are not right now coordinated. And I've been over there since that first letter. I went over and the community at Our Lady Lavang, historically, when this was their main campus, 5,000 congregants, whenever they had a church event, and they had many of them, and they were large, and the parking would extend a block and a half or two into the surrounding neighborhood with block driveways and block sidewalk corners and parking on the radius of corners. And so there was a discussion with the church and PBOT parking enforcement. And the result of that was that the parishioners were encouraged at church services to exit out in front of the German American Society, eastbound to the light, to avoid narrow street head-to-head cars after services where everything would be gridlocked. So right now, there's the main campus has moved to Happy Valley, but they're still having weeknight services and weekend services. And a lot of the attendees they're hardwired into exiting the area, going eastbound to 57th. They're going around the large concrete cylinders and queuing up at the light where there's another concrete cylinder. And then when they get a green light, because they tripped the signal wire, they're going into the westbound lane and entering the intersection. And often there's 5 or 6 of them in a row, and then you've got westbound traffic coming in and bicyclists and pedestrians. And so I brought that to Scott's attention. I sent the links to videos with an explanation that perhaps they have a conversation with the church in Happy Valley, and then they talk to the attendees at Mass. They were also parking in multiple directions in front of the German and American Society. I brought that to his attention. They've got signage there that seems to be corrected. And for westbound traffic coming from the signaled intersection, and when they get to 56th, many of those people are in a big hurry, and they're blowing through that intersection. And I witnessed a father and 2 kids about 8 and 10 on bikes. They were coming eastbound on Alameda and turning north on 56th, and almost getting run over by a car. And I'm not there all the time. I'm sure that there's many more close incidents there. And there's a lot of bicycle, the link from Alameda to Klickitat on 56th. Klickitat is another bikeway. Scott's the missing link person for bikeways. And I made him aware of that as a possible designated missing link with some mitigation for traffic, because there's also a lot of cut through traffic on 56th, people coming north or coming south for morning rush hour, and they don't want to wait at the light, so they cut through and go down past Dew's Grill on 54th, and then that reverses on in the evening. They don't want to wait at the light at 57th, and so they cut up at 54th and Alameda, and then 56th, and get back on 57th. So I just made him aware of some safety issues, and let him think about it. Maybe he can come up with some mitigation measures. And I think maybe there's a couple other folks here from the neighborhood that may want to speak up, or they may not.
So what Scott said in response to the visuals that Ed sent in his comments, he says, thank you so much for your input and feedback, particularly being so solutions oriented. He said, I will bring your suggestions back to the project team, including the engineering staff, and get back to the group about next steps. So anybody else have comments or concerns about the intersection of 57th and Alameda and Sandy?
Well, I'll make a couple of comments unless the neighbors want to say something. I go to the post office once a week, which is usually Wednesday morning, and not every Wednesday, but generally every Wednesday. And my route home has been through 56th and Alameda, or 57th and Alameda, and then south on 57th. So now I am going to 56th and up 56 past your house, Ed, and whatever that next street is where they just put in the handicap ramps, and over to 57th and then down 57th. And a couple of things. I mean, I've heard that there's more cut through traffic in the neighborhood from, I don't know where I heard that, but I heard it someplace. Secondly, it's obviously adding traffic to 57th, which is going to slow down the buses. And what really gets me is when you get to the light at 57th or on Sandy, if you're on Sandy, and all of a sudden that stopped all 4 ways, and here's one bicyclist meandering across the intersection. So we're doing all this for one bicyclist so they can cross the intersection. Doesn't make sense to me. Sorry.
Terry, I think you're reading the Red Lane project. You're very familiar with the Red Lane project. this is to add more time to the motor vehicle pass-throughs, the intersection. There's an occasional bicyclist that goes. We've asked them to coordinate the signals so they go both directions at one time, because no longer should cars be passing through. So this is really to benefit the buses and the motor vehicle traffic. There were far more cars like you going home from the post office, tripping that signal circuit on Alameda, going eastbound and putting an extra cycle of stop in there for the Sandy and 57th traffic. So once they get the coordination done, this should be an improvement on the motor vehicle through routes through there.
You're still adding motor vehicle traffic to 57th, which at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's not when I go, because I go in the morning. But I get my gas at 57th and Fremont, and I have seen the cars back clear up to Fremont to try to get through the light at Sandy, going southbound on 57th. So 57th has a huge amount of traffic. I think a lot of that has to do with the school buses going in there off of Columbia, the drivers coming back, but I'm not positive. But and you are correct that it was to make more green for Sandy, specifically for the traffic on Sandy, the buses on Sandy specifically. You were correct about that, because that's what April told me when I talked to April about it. April, for those who don't know, April works for Peabody.
So any other comments from folks on the Zoom? Therese.
Thank you, Ed, for including neighbors on 56th in this conversation. I wasn't sure where to put my comments, so this is nice just to have a little bit of a voice, so thank you. I do live on 56th, and I do have a couple safety concerns about the new bike, kind of the obstacle there at the German American Society. My biggest concern is for traffic's heading eastbound on Alameda. There isn't a yield sign or any kind of indication for what traffic should do when they're coming from Alameda approaching 56th and turning north. And so I'm seeing there's no yield sign or anything. I worry about bicyclists getting hit because the bicyclists think they have a pure right of way and there's no stop sign or yield or anything for cars turning onto 56th. That worries me a little bit. It may be intuitive, but it's really not when you see it happening live in the neighborhood. My second concern, which is not bigger, certainly, because it's not as much of a safety concern, but more an irritant, if I may, is people coming down 54th. Now what's happening, because people cannot go on to Sandy from 56th, where I live. They're cutting down to 54th and going down by Dews and trying to turn left onto Sandy at Dews, which is a huge mess, as you can imagine, turning left at Sandy and rush hour traffic. Traffic is lined up all the way to the church and the school up on Alameda and beyond. I don't know who I talked to about maybe having a no left turn there. I don't know if that's going to make it worse because it'll just spill people more into the neighborhood. But it seems like we've solved one problem and we've created many, many more. And again, I'm not sure who to talk to about this, but I appreciate the opportunity just to point those issues out. So thank you.
Yeah.
Teresa, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I'm just trying to envision, I feel like I can't envision what you're talking about the yield and the bike conflict. So I bike westbound through that intersection 2 mornings a week. I mean, granted, I'm there like really, really early and there's not a lot of traffic, but I'm having a hard time envisioning how it's different now in that scenario than it was, 2-3 months ago before that those things were put in. Can you?
That's a great question. Before, people would go down Alameda and just keep going straight up to the light at 57th. Now they can no longer do that.
Drivers?
Drivers.
You say people?
I'm so sorry.
Eastbound drivers?
Yes, so eastbound drivers will be coming up Alameda. They've cut through the neighborhood and they're trying to get that light. It's 57th. They can no longer do that. So they have to turn left onto our street, 56th. But they're not stopping for any bicycle. They're just going for it.
at 56th and Alameda, you see a bike vehicle conflict.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is that a
So-
four-way uncontrolled, like there's no stop signs in either leg of that intersection?
They added a stop sign on 56. So when you're driving 56 south and you're heading toward Alameda, you do have to stop now. That's brand new, which is great. But traffic that's coming on Alameda does not have a stop sign. They have no yield, nothing to stop them from just ramming into a bike who thinks they have a right of way, or they do have a right of way, scooting down Alameda. Because you have a lot of frustrated people who are like, oh, you always used to go this way, and now I have to turn left on 57th. And I fear that there's going to be an accident there.
Okay, so eastbound bike, westbound vehicle, left turn vehicle, bike vehicle collision. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to think about that next week.
Okay. Next time you're riding.
I will.
Hopefully the cars will stop for you. But it's also a conflict with cars, honestly, because cars can go that way still. So there just needs to be a yield or a stop sign or something for somebody there.
Therese, another concern that came up, and when you said stop sign, you made me think about it. And when you said dues, we identified the intersection at 70 or 54th and Sandy is going to be really horrible. I mean, in the early stages of this.
Right.
But I'm one of the things that's other people have brought up to me is the school there, the church school at 54th,
right,
and the people that are dropping off kids, bringing their cars in and dropping off kids. That is a four-way stop sign at 54th and Alameda. The other day wasn't I think a week or two ago when I came back from the post office. I came through there and there must have been 20 bicycles ahead of me right at that point. And they all rode right through the stop sign, even though there were cars waiting on 54th to go wherever they were going to go. There was at least 20 bicyclists, a whole group of them. And then when I finally went around down 56th and back up Alameda, they were waiting, or back up 57th. To cross Sandy, they were waiting. They were all waiting at the light, but unfortunately, bicyclists don't understand what a stop sign is. And if there's a car there, they're supposed to stop. If not, they can go through it. But there were cars at the stop sign. There were other vehicles at the intersection when I was there.
I understand your point, but my comment is only I want to make it safe, and in a conflict between a bicyclist and a car, the bike's gonna lose. So I just want someone safe at that intersection of 56 and Alameda.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up the fact that the school draws a lot of cars into the neighborhood, and now they have to find another way out.
True.
Zachary.
I was just gonna pitch in a little bit to what Terry said there. That concern about that turn at the bottom of Levang was brought up, and the PBOT, and correct me if I'm wrong, committee members, I think they said the best fix is to tell people to go down to the controlled light. But as you pointed out, that suggesting that to folks is not effective, right? And so I would love for us, as people who have experienced that space, I experienced it too, kind of like Jenny going through there. That we really do. And Ed, you've done a really admirable job of that with Scott, of saying, no, really, you do not want to be on the headlines with someone getting T-boned, with someone coming down Sandy westbound going 50 and someone trying to make that left. It's just going to happen. And so I really advocate for us as a committee to maybe piggyback on Ed's efforts or whatever it is, but to let PBOT know that there are some changes that need to happen so that that left turn especially gets addressed.
And Therese, email Scott, scott.cohen@portlandoregon.gov.
I don't know who that is, Ed.
He's the project manager.
Okay. Are there any discussions about what's happening at the stop sign at 54th and Sandy, where Dues is? Have there been discussions that I don't know about?
The only discussions that we've heard from Scott is that they are monitoring traffic all around this intersection to see what the impact is. And then, but it's going to be 6 months before they get traffic info and report back.
Yeah, my understanding was that they were going to monitor like the effects on the neighboring streets that the traffic change had, and consider modifications later. Like it seemed it seemed like this was not, a fixed, like project with a fixed start and end, right?
Right.
And I do worry about 56 because, as we all know, there's a lot of uncontrolled intersections. Then it's just an accident waiting to happen with all these frustrated people that can no longer go through there.
Well, so there is an option that on Sandy, on the west end of the where it goes over I-84, there's an on-ramp that for westbound traffic, and for years, and the evening rush hour, eastbound traffic, there would always be a person or two who'd want to make a left turn onto that ramp out of the eastbound traffic. And when they did the project from Hollywood to like 12th Avenue, the first time they improved that, I knew the project manager, Matt Brown, and I said, Matt, I brought this to his attention. I said, put a curb there that does not allow people to make that left turn, and you will greatly facilitate traffic flow. They did, it did. On the other side of 57th, Sandy and Alameda, over by the coffee shop there and the hemp place, when they modified that and closed off westbound traffic, they also put a curb there in the middle of center line of the road so that vehicles could not do it. Also at Fire in the Mountain down here, they used to have people westbound on Fremont, right, passing through the intersection, turning left into the parking lot at Fire in the Mountain, which abuts 57th. They put a center line curb there so people could no longer turn left. Therese, many of my neighbors who commute down that way have also complained that that left turn at the bottom of 54th to go eastbound on Sandy is just a nightmare. So I would say that that's something that maybe ought to be considered. It would put a curb in the center line at 54th, past Dew's Grill and up the hill. And you'll eliminate the left turns and open up the flow going down 54th from Alameda. You'll only be able to turn right. And you'll also eliminate the cut through traffic in the evening from all of the eastbound Sandy who are wanting to avoid that light and turning left at 54th at Dew's and coming up at Alameda and then going right and creating that traffic danger with people at the intersection and then cutting through the so that's an option that me personally, I think ought to be considered by PBOT, maybe brought up to their attention as a bigger discussion down the road.
Two quick comments. One, Scott Cohen said there wasn't enough money to put in a light or move the crosswalk light at 54th and Sandy. He said there's no money for that. And secondly, what you're going to find, you make another modification, and people do not like to go out of direction travel, including myself. And so you're going to probably find more cut through the neighborhood in a different direction if you close that intersection off.
Well, Terry, I think what you're going to find is it's going to be a very circuitous. There aren't that many entries into the north side of Sandy there. And you may get a few, but I think they'll get tired. They're going to find they're not saving time by the time they go up 49th or 48th and work their way up the ridge. And it just, I'm not sure it'll be a problem. It may not.
So we've had a bunch of suggestions on information that we should forward to Scott Cohen about this intersection. Maybe Nick has those somehow documented and we can get back to Scott with those comments.
This was recorded, right?
Yes, it was recorded.
I fell off my note taking.
Put that in the notes.
Again,
I suggest a subcommittee.
Again, Scott's going to be at CNN next Wednesday.
I suggest a subcommittee and I appoint Ed Gorman to be on it.
I'm not a member of the committee.
I said a subcommittee.
You aren't the goddess of this committee.
I appoint you to be on the subcommittee since you've already started this discussion.
I'm just a mere citizen, Sharon.
And Teresa too.
Mhm.
Okay, we only have 3 minutes left. And Jenny, we skipped your agenda item earlier, crosswalks on Halsey. So we will talk about that maybe at November.
Okay, and then there's still the issue of a replacement for me on the CNN Land Use and Transportation Committee. Or did we decide
Yes.
that just one member is enough? I don't know. Terry's on it, I know, but I was on it too, and I can't do two anymore. My new job is just horrible.
And Jenny,
You
you
mean
know,
great.
oh, excuse me. Jenny, you know that there are other revisions coming to Halsey. I don't know. I think they were delayed probably because of COVID.
No, I'm super familiar with that. The revisions to Halsey don't do anything between 60th and like, I don't know, 82nd or something. I can't remember where the.
Okay, do I have any committee members that would like to volunteer to be backup to Terry on the CNN Land Use Committee? Anybody want to volunteer for that?
It's just one night a month.
Meaning if Terry can't go.
Well, I don't know. We were both going.
We would like 2 people to go, but if all else fails, then we'll have maybe a backup to Terry. So Sharon, since you asked the question, do you want to be a backup to Terry?
I can be a backup. He can beg me if he can't make it.
Okay. Sharon likes people to beg her.
I mean, he'd have to. Terry very rarely misses things.
Okay.
So,
Those are all the agenda items I have tonight. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group? Zachary, your finger is up.
Have the finger up. Go to the group. Please tell your friends and your neighbors and your interested voters that this coming Tuesday evening from 7 to 9, we are hosting an election information night at the German American Society. And it'll be the 3 topics are the council race between Gonzalez and Hardesty. It's the chair race between Murin and Vega Peterson, and it's the charter reform. Hope you can tell your friends. It's not just about you all know this, but please, my pitch is tell your friends, tell your neighbors.
Zach, I've already told my neighbors across the street, which are in Madison South.
They should
I
come
did that
too.
last night.
I think we're all welcome. It's all good. We're not an exclusive group. We're a party group, and Sanjeev's bringing the food. So
cookies. Okay.
Will the candidates be there as well, or just a discussion?
the one candidate that can't make it is Commissioner Hardesty. She is sending a surrogate. She came to our primary one about 5 months ago, right? But tonight had or not tonight, Tuesday has a conflict. But the rest there will be people, the people.
Great.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the meeting, unless anybody objects, that the meeting is over. I don't think we have to have a motion for that.
No, just say thank you to the members of the general neighborhood that came and sat here through all this.
Yeah.
And hopefully you felt like you had a spot to talk, and if not, raise, speak up next time.
Yes, thank you all for
thanks.
coming. And
Thank
for
you.
the committee members, and Sanjeev, would you like to be on our committee? It is so fun.
I love it. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, yay. So meeting was worthwhile. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Nick, for taking notes. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thanks to the neighbors that came.